Our next speaker will be introduced by Nirupama, our very own Sheila ji.
The next speaker is Professor Sheila Bora, who will speak on the Mayong Community Museum and Village Research Center, Interpreting a Living Heritage. Dr. Sheila Bora served in the Department of History, Dibrugarh University, for 32 years from 1976 to 2008. Currently, she is an adjunct professor in the Department of Archaeology, Cotton University, and an advisor, Department of History, Royal Global University, Guwahati. She is a two-time recipient of the Fulbright Scholarship from the United States Foundation of India. She is also a life member of the Indian History Congress and the Northeast India History Association. Dr. Bora is, of course, also the state convener, Assam chapter, intact. I invite you.
How do I start? Where is this? Respected Chairman Gupta ji, respected Vice Chairperson of INTAC, respected Madam Mishra, my co-speakers on the dais, and all my colleagues and conveners from different chapters of INTAC. I'm indeed privileged to Nirupama for giving me this occasion to speak here, because this was a project, a passion project for me, which I worked with. It's something very new. Being a historian, I've never done anything like this. I would like to tell you that the origin of the project, as I worked through, I learned the importance of what memory and a living heritage was. I never realized before what memory could be, actually. This project I took up as a request from the community, who came and said, Madam, please, I was working with a natural heritage in Mayong, the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary. I'm very closely associated. And then the community people came up and said, Madam, you are always working with this wildlife sanctuary. Why don't you come to us and talk and help us to save our living tradition that is fast disappearing? So I said, let me try, and this is how this project came about. I was assisted very actively by our convener of our Kamrup chapter, Dr. Manzil Hazarika, who is here. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of Mayong, but this is a place which has been mentioned in the Mahabharata. It is a very, very ancient civilization. It is by the bank of the river Brahmaputra and falls within the Kamaikha Peeth. The territory of Mayong falls within the Peeth of Kamaikha. It's a very small village and a very mystical place. The name Mayong has come from Maya, or illusion. And it is known for Tantricism, black magic, which black magic, I would say, was more psychological than anything else. It empowered the community, and also white magic or healing practices. And this village is struggling hard to safeguard its living heritage. They're very ashamed because occult practices have been, have come to be looked upon as something not very nice. So they, on one hand, they're trying to shy away to tell people that they belong to that community. On the other hand, they don't want to give it up, and they're struggling very hard how to live with it. And this is how, built on their memory and what I have recovered from them, we have tried to build up this museum. As I have said, the civilization dates back to the 2nd century, but flowered mainly during the 9th and 10th century. 11th century, it took a different turn. I will come across, I will tell you about this when I proceed further. The aims of the project was to adopt a strategy for solving the problems of a gradually disappearing cultural identity, to review the cultural significance of tangible cultural heritage, and to narrate a comprehensive story about Mayong's mythical power and integration of magic as a way of life for the people. While doing this, we have managed to hear the voices and stories of the local communities, and this has enlivened, I'm sure you will see in the presentation of heritage. And it has also made us bring to the forefront to include dispossessed people, the historically marginalized social groups like ethnic minorities, the poor, and especially I would love to mention women. You will see how important women have been in keeping this culture alive, or even trying to keep this culture alive. Mayong's living heritage, which I have used in setting up the museum, were oral history and folklore, knowledge preserved in the manuscripts. Most of the folklore has been narrated in manuscripts written on aloe wood, the bark of aloe wood, social practices and codes of conduct and superstitions, rituals and festive events, knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe, local mythology, and also the continuing practice of occult rituals, which have long and complex histories associated with them. Memory, as I said, is a critical part of our identity, and this has been used very extensively for setting up the museum. Mayong's ancient civilization, I have narrated in 3 different phrases: earlier medieval period, late medieval period, and pre-modern period. And the evidence of religious shrines and relics in and around Mayong, we can conclude that Mayong was a part of Kamakya, a thriving seat of Tantricism. And we find that during the 8th and 9th century, exponents of Buddhism and Hinduism thronged to the Peeth to learn the practice of Tantricism. There, as from the Kamakya, they moved along the river banks, there were a number of caves where these tantric priests found very convenient to occupy and sort of meditate. So we find that this was a very hotbed of tantric practices. And we have found, it is not just a guess, but we have found archaeological evidences of even Buddhist Tantricism being available there. For example, Haragauri, the idol of Haragauri, is very associated with Tantricism, and we have found idols of Haragauri. All of you must be knowing about the Yoni-Peeth in Kamakya and several other archaeological excavations. This is, for example, an engraving of an 8-spoked wheel on a pedestal, which can be compared to the Dharma Chakra of Buddhism. It is very much in one of the caves in Mayong. This is the carving of Haragauri, Uma Maheshwar, which is found on a rock boulder, and it is still very alive. People go there, and here there were human sacrifices where, very interestingly, while in the archaeological excavations, we have found, I have used the data of the archaeological excavation to sort of, as an effective tool for integrating it with the narrative of my research. In this peat, there were not only human sacrifices, but there were sacrifices of other animals as well. And 7 swords are found in that peat even today. They have been decorated and kept in that peat. And while excavating, some of these swords have been found. And I have placed them in the museum with an explanation by its side, as I have shown. I have no time to read it out, but it's very interesting. They tell us the story of these swords. And even today, when they have given up human sacrifice, every year they take these swords from the peat, they take it out in a procession, and they sort of worship these swords, which means, they're not giving up this totally from them. Mentally, they are not sort of given up this respect for this sort of practice. The intangible aspects of Mayong's magic do not, these are the tangible aspects which we have combined with what we have found, the data. Now, there are intangible aspects of Mayong's magic which do not appear to be documented. For example, the mantras, which were written between the 12th and 18th centuries, contain information on herbal medicines, among other things. But this manuscripts, they have tremendous power of storytelling, but unfortunately, the urgent attention that these manuscripts need for preservation, we found were not there. So during our project, we collected as many manuscripts as possible. We tried to conserve them, restore them, digitize them, and put them in the museum, available for people to see. Now, according to our mythology, it is said that Bhima's son Ghatotkacha had gone for meditation to Mayong, and it is because of this he could defeat his enemies in war. It is believed that in 1337, the Tantrics from this village had defeated 1 lakh cavalry soldiers of Muhammad Shah. In 1667, when Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb sent Raja Ram Singh to conquer Assam, he refused to fight with the Ahom soldiers when he heard about the black magic of Mayong. I believe everyone was turned into sheep and sent back. After Raja Ram Singh's defeat at the hands of the Ahoms in 1671, he was never to be found, which is surprising. It is held by the local population that this was possible only because of the use of black magic. Among other stories, there are stories of how people just vanished into thin air, local legends that hold their ancestors could bring animals like tigers under their spell, casting spells to cure people. Only recently, I must tell you, this year, about 3 months back, I went to see a festival where a man by magic was made to fly in the air. He just kept flying in the air for half an hour. So some people still have that. I don't know what is that power, but I did see it with my own eyes. It did happen. Now, this is the story of capturing a tiger. This man we see in the middle of the cage, his name was Hurabaj, and he was very well known. He's still known and worshipped in the village. He knew mantras where he could hypnotize a tiger, and whenever there was a tiger in the village, he would be called and he would go and hypnotize the tiger. I've put this up. This is a showcase which I've put up in the museum. Now, this is by the side is his granddaughter. She's alive. And I went and met her, and she showed me some of the things which her grandfather used to do the magic. And she says, we saw this. And in fact, I have met some other Bejas who are now old, but they said they have seen Hurabaj themselves hypnotizing tigers. Now, it's very difficult to do away with these stories when people say they have witnessed them. So this is the story of Hurabaj, how he hypnotizes a tiger. Then these are living practitioners who are curing diseases, both men and women. This one is doing certain pains, lumbago pain, jaundice, liver. People of that village hardly go to see a medical doctor. The medical department says they don't have patients because they still believe in this sort of treatment. And here, for example, I would love to show you this one, for example. You talk of any disease, a woman will run to get that herb from somewhere and come and treat you. Unfortunately, most of these herbs have disappeared now. They themselves admit that they cannot find these herbs anymore. Ayurvedic companies have gone, they have uprooted the plants, taken them away. Not a single plant can be found. Some of the herbs which were used have dried up, and I have sent them to botany departments all over the place. They can't recognize. They said, if you can send us a live plant, maybe we will be able to recognize the plant, but not the dried leaves like that. Identify the plant. The stories of magic reside only in memory, but they are, because magic is gradually becoming a taboo, they keep it as closely guarded secrets and buried memories which they had already learned. Now, I found a magic box while I was doing this. One of the magicians who was dead, I found a box which he had used. And in that box, I recovered 149 items, which he used for curing various diseases. And here are some of the items which I'm showing you. A fugitive berry cocoon, rhino hide, nails and head of a tortoise, tail of a porcupine. These were all found wrapped up in little papers and kept inside that magic box, which I have now displayed in the museum. Vagina of a tigress, head of an original rattlesnake, all this. The evolution of magic in the region and its fast disappearance needs to be juxtaposed against reality. The river systems played a significant character in the narrative. Most of the people, they could engage in this practice. Sorry. Can I take one moment? Yeah. Most of these people could engage in this practice because they were agriculturists. They had their own farms, and the rest of the time they had to sort of give a lot of time to their rituals of praying. But now, because the land has been eroded and these people young people have all gone out looking for livelihoods, they are no longer able to devote time to the rituals that are necessary. So around the 15th century, another reason why this is disappearing is the coming of Srimanta Shankardev of Vaishnavism, which is a syncretic religion. And here, the tradition of mystic verses or rituals of magic are no longer needed to be followed. So most of the tribal communities have converted to Vaishnavism, and they no longer try to follow these rituals. So this is the Vaishnav, a small Vaishnav monastery where people, but though it is a Vaishnav monastery, though they don't worship gods, I have found that they have manuscripts. I discovered this monastery because I went in search of manuscripts. The manuscripts were absolutely moth-eaten. I'll show you. This box contains the moth-eaten manuscripts. And these had valuable mantras. So there's a mixture. They are saying they are Vaishnavas, but they still believe in these mantras and they don't touch them. And because they are not touching them and opening the boxes for so long, they have been moth-eaten. Nobody knows about them. And this is what we have rescued and we have put in the museum. So since my time is almost over, let me just close by saying now they are combining all this together in a festival. Every year the area celebrates a festival and they bring out the swords from the Kasai Khati temple. Kasai Khati is human sacrifice temple. They bring out the manuscripts. The procession is led by the magicians and all the tribal communities. And for the last 353 years, without a break, this community has brought, celebrating this festival, trying to keep the tradition alive, combining everything together. There. So this is the king of Mayong. Incidentally, Mayong still has a king. And this is the procession they bring out every year, trying to unify all their thing. And, they narrate stories from their memories. Just a few glimpses of what we have done in the museum. These are the manuscripts in AssetFree boxes, which we have tried to conserve. These are manuscripts which we have restored and given back to certain thing, and certain items which people sort of the area, we're trying to repair it for them and put it in the museum. This is a museum which Dr. Manzil Hazarika and we tried to sort of set up in Mayong. And we hope that we can help Mayong to preserve its memory and its living heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila ji, for bringing the magic back in our lives.